What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jay, and this is the Jay Sinky channel. Guys, okay, so let me tell you something. I really, put a lot of thought process in this Talkin Tackle specifically because it is a very, 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 very broad topic. But it's also one of the best rigs that you could ever ask for. I think it's one of the most, it is, not possibly, but it is the most known rig across the fishing industry. So, guys, in today's Talkin Tackle, the tackle that we're going to be talking about is the Texas rig. Do you or someone you know love to fish and you're really not sure what to get them this year for Christmas? Head on over to Carl's Bait and Tackle over at shopcarls.com and check out all the great sales going on for Fishmas. I know that sounds crazy, but Santa Carl is in town and he is bringing all the great deals right now. And if you're really not certain what to buy, there's great bundle kits that you can get for your favorite angler. Check it out, shopcarls.com. Back to your video. A Texas rig is... the Texas rig is, to me, by far the most popular rig in the fishing industry. A lot of people know the Texas rig and don't even realize that it is the Texas rig. It is literally just the first rig that a kid will learn when they first start fishing. It's the first technique I teach anybody when we start fishing. The first thing I teach them is a Texas rig. Why? Because it is easy, it's basic, and it can be so complicated once you get to know it. It's easy to, what's the word? It's a good one that works like all the time, all year round. And it's simple enough that anybody can use it. So it's one of those that's great to always have. I feel like 90% of the time I always have some sort of Texas rig rigged on a pole of mine, and it's one that I'm always taking with me. And we're going to go over everything as far as the reels, the rods, the line, and all that stuff that you want to know. We're going to go over the baits that you're going to use. I mean, it's such a broad topic, and most people know something about the Texas rig already, so we'll see how much we can actually fit into this actual video. But we're going to start with the basics. The very first thing that we're going to talk about is, what is a Texas rig? Like, what's the basic part of a Texas rig? So what I have here is, you have a good old hook. This is an EWG hook. I believe this is a 2-aught EWG hook, okay? Right here is a good old Guggen Slim Shake worm. Okay, I've got it in a two-tone color on purpose. I'm going to really show, because like this part I want to explain as best that I can, because it's something I think that's important when it comes to the kind of plastic that you have. So when it comes to a Texas rig, a lot of guys, you start upside down, and I don't do this. I don't start upside down, so it's confusing to me. I like to start with the bait upside down instead. But purple's the bottom, green is on top. You start with the bottom inside to the hook. Okay, I know a lot of people think I'm so weird for doing that. You go about 1/8 of an inch in. You go up. You want to turn your hook there. You come up and over that eye as best as you can. Okay, so the idea here is, so with a Texas rig, you want to get it to look, as straight as you can. You don't want it looking too wonky on there. You don't want it looking unnatural in the water. If it looks unnatural in the water, then the fish, the bass, may not even go for it. So the idea is, you kind of want it to be on there with an EWG hook, especially. You want it to be on there looking kind of on there straight. So what you do is you line it up, see where that hook right here ends. You can mark it with your thumb, whatever you do. Come through, pierce it all the way through the body. This is what I do. Line it up, make sure it's on there good. Okay, and then what you want to do is you skin hook it right there. That right there is a Texas rig. That's what they call Texposed, meaning it's weedless. And when a bass comes in and bites, it hooks them up. You see that? Comes down. That is the basic of what a Texas rig is. Now, depending on the hook that you're going to use, it's going to depend on how you skin hook it or how you hook it up on that bottom part. But the overall basic is that. So now, wow, I can't speak sometimes in these videos, you know. I bet y'all are glad you get these little clips because I just kind of do it as it comes. But now, let's get into the nitty-gritty and all the other fine stuff that really makes the Texas rig a very, very, very broad rig. I'm going to get the basic stuff out of the way as far as the rods and the reels and the line that you use. I do that first because to me that tends to be one of the quicker things that I can go over. When it comes to a Texas rig, if you're using a bait caster, which is what I highly recommend when it comes to a Texas rig, but you can use it on a spinning cast, do what you do. I'm very, very familiar when it comes to bait caster. When it comes to bait casters, use at least a 7-to-1 ratio reel or higher. I have an 8-to-1 ratio reel. It is the one that I would more recommend when it comes to a Texas rig, because here's the theory behind it is when you're making tosses out there, you want to hop it, you know, let it be slow coming up. But when you have to pull it back, you want to pull it back as quick as you can. And I know for a lot of, you know, pond anglers, pond hoppers like myself, that's not always like the biggest deal. It's okay to let it hang out there. But I know for a lot of the tournament guys, when you are on a time frame, it is important to be able to make as many casts as you can and not wear yourself out while you do it. So that is why in theory they say to have the higher speed reel. Do I think you can get away with a lower speed reel? Absolutely. I think that a 7-to-1 reel is probably that juicy middle spot that you could get away with and still be happy with it and get great performance out of it, especially if you're just an everyday angler, or I mean a pond hopper or something like that. You know, you're not into it for like the big tournaments and things like that. You're just out there just trying to have fun. 7-to-1 ratio, juicy spot. When it comes to the rod that you're going to want to use, the most popular one that I've seen on, as far as the research that I've done, and now personally I don't agree here with the length, but it always boils down to a preference and how it really feels in your hands yourself and what you feel. The most popular one that I see is a 7'6" heavy action with a fast tip on it. I totally agree with the heavy and the fast part. I 100% agree there. A 7'6" rod, for me, being a pond angler and a pond hopper like I am, I feel like a 7'6" rod is a bit long. You know, like a lot of the times I have things that are right behind me, so I'm not able to, I don't always have that space that I'm able to be able to cast that kind of a rod. Now granted, a longer rod will get you a further cast, and it will also have more backbone when it comes to your, you know, fighting the bass. So if you can get away with a 7'6" rod, get away with it. I recommend it for sure. It seems to be a higher recommendation, so why not do it? I personally have a 7'3" rod that I think gets it done just fine. I also have 7-foot rods. I have a 7'1". I think I even have a 7. I have a 7'3", a 7'1", and a 7-foot. I know for a fact, and I do believe I'm pretty sure I've used all at some point to put a Texas rig, because sometimes I'll just take one pole with me, and if it's all that I got, then that's what's going to be used, you know. I have to say that a heavy action is good. You want a backbone, but that fast or extra fast tip, that is one of the most important things. I feel like that is the biggest key when it comes to your rod setup. You want a fast tip, and the reason why is because if you got that down in the water, right? So we're talking, it's down, your line's down in the water. The tip itself is going to be where that sensitivity is. So if you have a more moderate tip, if that bass is down there, your tip's not doing anything as much. The faster the tip, the more that action reacts with the bass itself. So therefore, the quicker you will be to getting that hook set, and it'll bend, and that hook will just go right where it needs to. That's where that backbone comes in too, because you want it to be able to withstand the fight that's going to come from taking that. Overall, a Texas rig is not supposed to be a finesse rig, but let me be real with you guys. If you dial it down, you put on a small hook, you put on a small weight, and we're going to get into all of that, but if you do that, it can be a finesse style too. But in general, it's not a finesse style rig. So you want a backbone when it comes to your rod. Now, when it comes to the line that you're going to be using, the most popular weight line when it comes to anglers that do more of like the lakes and things like that, bigger bodies of water, they're tying on 15 to 17 pound fluorocarbon. You want fluorocarbon. If you don't like fluorocarbon, at least do a copolymer, because you want something that sinks. I don't want you, if you're not comfortable with it, I guess you can get away with monofilament. You really can. Everybody does. All beginners use monofilament and they're using a Texas rig. It's not that you can't get away with it, but if you want the best bang for your buck as far as the action and the chances of you hooking up right and all that great stuff, go with fluorocarbon. 15 to 17 pound fluorocarbon. It sinks. So that's the idea behind it. You want the Texas rig to sink. That's why you want fluorocarbon. It's the best sinking line. Now, personally, because I do pond hop, I say that in almost every line now, or every little section. I get away with 12 pounds fluorocarbon. I do use copolymer sometimes on certain, if, like I said, if I take my one combo out and it's just what's on there, then that's just what's gonna work. If it's a copolymer, it's a copolymer. That's just what it is. But I do get away with 12 pound fluorocarbon on my bodies of water. But like I said, I size down. They're not the biggest bodies of water all the time. Think about your body of water. Think about the size fish that you think you're going to be fighting. Think about the kind of coverage that you have too. Are you dealing with a lot of lay down? Are you dealing with a lot of wood? Are you dealing with nothing on the bottom? That's going to be where you really need to consider the line weight. Now, I showed you the Texas rig and what it looked like in the basic of what a Texas rig is. And if you didn't see, or I guess if you did see, if you didn't notice, I didn't have a weight on there. And that is because the Texas rig doesn't require a weight to be classified as the Texas rig. That's just not the case. A Texas rig is just that. It's the hook and the bait, the way it sits. That's a Texas rig. Now, a lot of people, everybody, as far as I know, should know that you can put a weight on there as well. The most popular range of weights that are out there is from 1/8 of an ounce all the way up to 1/2 an ounce. That's the most popular range. Now, I'm not saying you can't get away with lighter, and I'm not saying you can't get away with heavier. I'm saying that's the most popular range that most people, pond hoppers, people going out to the lakes, that's the most popular range for any angler across the board. 1/8 of an ounce up to 1/2 an ounce. And I use every weight in between that. The two most popular weights that I personally use is 1/8 of an ounce and 1/4 of an ounce. The third most popular is 3/8. Now let me tell you why. And I pretty much have already said it before. I don't always fish the biggest bodies of water. So, therefore, if they're not that deep, I'm not going to have to always get away with heavier weights. That doesn't always apply, because sometimes when I'm fishing certain bodies of water and I just want that bait to go flashing past the bass, because if I'm looking to get a reaction bite, I don't want it just kind of floating down in front of him and giving him a time to actually look at it. If I'm looking to get a strike, I want it to just flash by him and him just want it. That's when you want to get away with a heavier weight, okay? When you're trying to get away with lighter weights, the idea behind it is when it falls into the water, it just kind of floats a little bit more behind it. A weight's going to pull it down to the bottom regardless. It's just a matter of how quickly is it going to put it to the bottom. That's really that's the biggest difference on which weight you're going to use. The heavier the weight, the quicker it's going to get to the bottom of your body of water. You can go weightless. Personally, right now, weightless is doing it for me. I actually have a weightless rigged on right now. You can't even see my pole. It's right here. Just, knocking the ceiling. It's fine. But I personally have been, getting them on the weightless here recently, so I would definitely recommend right now trying that. It could work for you. It all depends on where you are in the world and what part of the body and water and temperature and all that great stuff on the action that you're trying to get. The size hook that you use is not going to just be one size hook fits all. That's just not how it works. There are 3 style hooks that are the most popular when it comes to the Texas rig. There's the EWG hook, there's the straight shank hook, and then there's the offset hook. Now, personally, my 2 favorites right now is the EWG hook and the offset hook. And that's just because that's just what I've basically learned on. So I haven't really, I have a whole set of shank hooks right here, straight shank hooks right here that I'm planning on using and, getting more of a feel for that. But those are the 3 most popular hooks. Now when it comes to the size hook that you're going to use, that's all going to vary on the size bait that you're using, the size body that you're fishing, and I mean overall how it's going to, you know, affect, I don't know how to put that. Like, you know, when it comes to, you know, how when I'm using like a 2/0 hook, I'm thinking about, okay, I want it to be able to go through my plastic and not tear my plastic up or something like that. So I think about the kind of plastic that I'm using, and if it's thicker plastic or if it's thinner plastic, does it tear up easier? Things like that. That's what goes through my mind when I'm thinking about the hook that I'm using, besides the size of the body of water that I'm fishing, and I mean ideally the size of the fish that I'm fishing for, you know what I mean? Because in the ponds and stuff like that, you can get away with a 2/0, 3/0. I have 4/0s that I have too. I have 5/0s, but I don't really use them as much. They're thicker, they're bigger. You know, I feel like that brings a bigger presence in the water, and when you're trying to not be such, you know, have such presence in the water, you definitely want to be on the smaller side of things. I also prefer a thin wire hook, which, you know, not everybody likes, but like I said, for me, it's about the presence that I'm putting in the water. So I'm trying to make it as less as I can. I wouldn't say finesse so much, but I guess that's kind of what I'm describing. But it's a full size. It's not like I'm throwing in a smaller profile, but I'm kind of, it's skinnier in a sense. It's kind of like I feel like the 2/0 thin wires can be less seen from the fish than a regular 5/0 hook. You put them next to each other, you can definitely see the difference in the diameters and, you know, the size of them. But it all depends on the size of the actual bait that you're fishing too. And that's why I like the offsets, because the offsets typically are bigger. And for me, I like pairing those up with worms, especially on the longer side when you're dealing with something like, you know, this big old exo ribbon, this 10-inch. It's a 10-inch exo ribbon. This right here to me is going to be better off on an offset than a regular EWG hook. And you can do a 3/0 EWG and you have the extra length, so it's on the skinnier side still, because that's all the difference between a 2/0 and a 3/0 and a 4/0 is the diameter and the length. And I'm talking like millimeters difference. The only way you could really see, if you put a 2 and a 3/0 next to each other, you may not be able to see the difference really with the naked eye. You'd really have to look at it hard. But if you put a 2/0 next to a 5/0, you can clearly see the difference, especially a thin wire versus a thick wire. That's a whole, like, other Talkin Tackle we'll have to get into. But that's why I said, guys, this Texas rig, it is a very broad subject, but it's also very simple. I hope that makes sense by the time we get done with this. Just for reference on this. So this right here is a 2/0 thin wire by VMC. These right here are one of my, actually, I'm sorry, this is a 3/0. I like the 2 and the 3/0s. Those are my most popular go-to sizes. And I'm sorry if I didn't clarify. 2/0s, 3/0s, 4/0s, and I believe up to 5/0s are probably going to be your most popular range of hooks. Now, again, I'm not saying you can't get away with it short on the smaller side, and I'm not saying you can't get away with it when on the bigger side. There is a time and a place where you can get away with it smaller, and there's a time and a place where you can get with it bigger. Most popular general range, 2/0 to a 5/0. So, speaking of, I thought this was a 2/0, but it's a 3/0. I probably have a 2/0 here too, but we're just going to show you like a difference in diameter. So 3/0 here, 5/0. So you see the diameter difference there? It's definitely thicker. Now, when it comes to the length, the difference is almost with these. You can see the difference. I mean, it's like it's like I said, guys, they're millimeters difference between, you know, 2/0, 3/0 to 4/0, 5/0. So when it comes to, I'm talking maybe 4 millimeters difference on the actual size, length, and diameter. Diameter to me looks more I feel like I can see the difference in the thickness more than I can the actual length, but it's there. It makes all the difference in the world to some anglers. You just have your preferences. You end up getting your combo in your hand, you setting it up, and whatever you get comfortable with is what you're going to do almost every single time. It's just how the Texas rig works. you really get comfortable with your Texas rig and how you like to set it up. You got anglers out there that are gonna swear by these straight shank hooks. I've never used these before. I just know they're one of the most popular things, and these are a thin one. These are a thin. Said it on there somewhere, finesse or something like that. Light wire finesse. So you got people out there that will just use straight shank hooks. And I personally haven't gotten that comfortable with a straight shank hook because of the actual T-rigging part. You have to actually shove it into the bait itself and you don't come all the way through. And I have learned how to do that, and I'm going to actually apply it. It's not like I didn't know how to do it. I got comfortable with the way I was doing it, and there was nothing wrong with the way I was doing it, so why not? After I've watched my research a little bit more, I see that a straight shank hook could be better with hookup ratios. And the reason why is because, let me just show you, just get the two little thin wires here. So, with an EWG hook, you see that you have like a 90, it's what they say, a 90-degree little hook up there, so that your bait can sit on there straight and expose it, okay? There is less space between here because of that than there is on this one. There isn't that little, there's no lip there at all. So the chances of you getting a hookup ratio, apparently, and it makes sense, I have to go out there and try it myself, but as far as like what I've learned, that's got a better hookup ratio with it because there is no gap there to offset your bait, or to have your bait on there a certain way. So like, you have to kind of weigh your options as far as where a lot of guys use the straight shank hooks when it comes to putting into punching and flipping, because it actually doesn't go through the bait and it takes a little bit of a more of a beating, I guess you could say, before you feel like you're getting snagged on everything. Because yeah, you can expose with an EWG hook, but it's not always foolproof. You throw it out there, you got a piece of wood, that thing will go just like that through it because it's just a piece of plastic. But with the straight shank hook, you have more plastic, so you have a better chance of actually getting through whatever you're trying to get through, your wood, whatever, because there's more plastic that it actually would have to dig through. I hope that makes sense. Alright, so before we get into the broad topic of all the plastics that you can use when it comes to a Texas rig, I'd actually have a shorter time telling you the plastics that couldn't be Texas rigged than if I started with the ones that could, because that would be like forever. Like, show me a plastic, can you Texas rig it? 90% of the time, probably. But we'll get into that. Just hold on, we'll get there. What I want to get into right now is what we call flipping and pitching. And now if you know those terms, great. If not, you can always YouTube it. I'm sure that we are going to do a Talkin Tackle on it specifically. But it is revolved around, you have flipping jigs and pitching jigs. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just a heavyweight Texpose, basically, a Texas rig, but it's with a heavier weight. And that's where we get into the heavier weights. That's what I was trying to get at, basically. Remember I told you that, you get up to a ½ ounce, and those are the most popular ranges. When you start getting into the heavier sizes, a lot of the times what they're trying to do is what, like I said, it's called pitching and flipping, is where you're pitching into like heavier cover, you're getting it down in there, you want it to get past whatever you have on top there, whether it be, lily pads, or whether it's something annoying like pine straw. I mean, even lighter weights can get through pine straw, but the heavier, thicker cover is what I'm getting at. So you want a heavier weight so you can get past the cover. It's called pitching and flipping, and the way it looks is on Texas rig. And ideally, what I've heard when it comes to Texas, when it comes to pitching and flipping, and what I've used personally, you kind of want like a slimmer body. I'm not saying you can't get away with a bulkier body when it comes to flipping and pitching, but if you're pitching and flipping into wood, and you got branches, and you got thicker things around you that, if you got something with crazy flanges out there that can catch on it, it just doesn't always have the best action that you ideally want. If you go with a slimmer body, as far as skinnier kind of thing, it just kind of gives it a better presentation, I think, and it looks overall better. It moves better in the water when you're pitching and flipping. But that's when you're going to be using those heavier weights. Now, a lot of the times, there's also what we call pegging the weight. And what you use on those is generally a bobber stopper. You put it up and you literally peg your weight right to the hook. So therefore, and then you have some people who move it up and have it only move a certain, amount of space or something like that. But ideally it's right up on the hook, and the weight in the hook itself are just kind of one contraption altogether. The hook the weight doesn't go anywhere when it's moving around. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of anglers will make. You don't have to peg your weight. It don't have to. A lot of people do. I do on occasion. It really depends. If I need my weight to stay right there with my hook, then I'll peg it. But otherwise, I feel like I get a better hookup ratio when I'm not pegging my weight. And the reason being is because when that weight isn't right up against the hook itself, it kind of gives that bait a better presentation, because I think the weight itself distracts the fish. They see the weight and they know instantly, like, okay, something's kind of weird here. I'm not sure what that is. But if the weight pulls away a little bit from the bait, the bait's back here, this looks like a better presentation by itself. You take it, and then when the bass actually takes it, that weight, if it's pegged up against that hook, if the bass shakes his head and does a head shake, it has a better chance of shaking out that whole setup, because the weight's right there. It's using the weight to its benefit, and it can literally shake it loose and boom, you lose the fish. If the weight isn't on the hook, you have a better chance of that weight not working in the fish's favor as far as getting caught. It's just kind of the math behind it on that one. If the weight's further away from its mouth, it's not going to be able to use it in its favor. I know I went off topic there when it came to the pitching and flipping, but my whole point with the pitching and flipping part was that you do get away with heavier weights, and that's typically when you use it. When it comes to pegging on a pitching or a flipping situation, that's going to be a personal preference. I've heard when some people want to use it pitching and flipping, they want to peg it because they want it to get right down into the point and back up, and they don't want that weight moving around. But then at the same time, and see, that's where I think you would want to peg it, because if that weight is free when you're pitching and flipping, if that weight is free, it has a better chance of hooking up onto something by itself as far as a branch, and then you're going to get snagged. And if your weight gets, sorry about the movement there, if your weight gets snagged on a branch, let's say it gets stuck somehow, because it can, and you pull, there's a chance that if it's too far away from your actual hook itself, it can wrap itself around something and you can get it lost. So when you're pitching and flipping, you're dealing with a lot of coverage and a lot of thick stuff. So in my opinion, when you're pitching and flipping, you may want to definitely try pegging your weight. I don't know, it's just an opinion. Try not to, see what happens, see what you like better. It always comes down to what feels best in your hand and what you feel is best for your bodies of water that you're fishing. You're going to get to know your body of water better than anybody else. So when it comes to how you're fishing it, that's really all going to be up to how you feel about it. Alright, so let's get into the topic of the plastics that you are going to be able to use for a Texas rig. Guys, the list is literally, to me, pretty endless. I mean, you can my favorite things to Texas rig are going to be in the worm family, and in the creature family, and in the crawl family, and I don't know, all kinds of stuff. I love Texas rig is probably, I don't know if it's my favorite rig, but it's like, it's my most popular rig. I don't know, is that the same thing? I don't know if that's really the same thing. I like being able to have the Texas rig just always there. It's just like the old reliable. And it's because it is so versatile, but also so very simple at the same time. You literally just take out 1/8 of an ounce weight. And when we were talking about the weights, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. Tungsten is one of the most popular things that are being used when it comes to weight. Okay, it is denser, so therefore it has a smaller profile. Under the water, it makes more noise. But you know what? Majority of people out there are still just using those good old lead weight sinkers too. It's really all about preference, what you want to use, what you're able to afford. that's about it, you know, either tungsten or lead. Those are the really two most popular options. Right now, tungsten is so popular that it's becoming more affordable. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, is the day that everybody is able to really go with tungsten over lead. But anyway, guys, let's get onto the subject of the actual plastics that you're going to be using. These right here are a popular one. It's a ribbon-tailed worm. Okay, I'm going to go over some more. Exopod. Another popular one. It's a crawl, creature-like bait, I guess. I'm not sure. I consider it like a crawl bait because it has the phalanges like a crawl, but I think they consider it more like a creature bait. Some different ones that I saw some underwater footage of these brush hog style lures or baits, and in my opinion, when it came to what the bass were reacting to the most, something that looked like this guy right here was getting the most attention. Just a brush hog style kind. And I don't know why. I'm not sure what it was about that profile, because I mean they threw multiple different ones in the pond, and that the fish just seemed to go to this one majority of the time. And I'm not talking like a color difference either between baits. Some had different colors, but like this is a watermelon red color. You know, this is one of the more popular colors, and they were using it with different baits, but they seem to react to that one. So I'm very I'm going to try that one more just because of the underwater footage that I saw. I saw how they reacted to it, and that's going to be something I'm going to try more of now. Moving on, we have some what they call beaver-like. What is this one? Okeechobee. No, this one's called the Varmint by Carl's Amazing Baits. Just a creature-like bait. Got a thicker body. It's got phalanges. You know, something like that. It's an Okeechobee craw color. Love that color. And when it comes to colors, guys, it's the more popular colors. It's when I do my videos, I always try to sit here and think about it, because I'll go into it and I'm like, yeah, it's the normal colors, and then I have to like slow down. I stop myself and I think about if I'm talking to somebody that has no idea what I'm talking about. So for anybody who doesn't like that, I'm sorry, but for me, I really do try to look at it from I really do try to teach like I'm teaching to a beginner. So when it comes to the most popular colors too, guys, what you want to use is probably going to be a green pumpkin. And there's a variety of green pumpkin colors, but something green pumpkin, something June bug, something black or blue, you know, black and blue, but you know, straight black's even good. And overall, natural colors is what you really want. That watermelon red is a really good color, even on a darker days. You know, there's something about that watermelon red color that can come through even on murkier waters. My brain's trying to come through with all these colors, because there's a variety of colors, and it really depends on the color that your body of water is. I know that sounds crazy, but like one of the colors that worked well for me this past summer, let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh, I know they're right here. Here we go. Was this one right here became my favorite. And I know if some of y'all watched some of my videos before, y'all know this became my favorite real quick over the summer. Was this Saw Crawl by 10,000 Fish. And look, this one's empty. There's like one in there hanging out, and I think it's been used, and that's why it's not in there in the clamshell anymore. But the Saw Crawl in the Texas crawl color was just slaying it for me this season. I'm not sure what it was, and the Texas color, this is just, let me just get this out. Oh, it is in the clamshell. It's just not in there. Have you been used? No, I'm just terrible about keeping things in their clamshell. So on top here, you have like a green pumpkin. So that's why I said a green pumpkin color, like base. And then on the bottom, you have this awesome orange color. And for me, that orange color is what seems to make it, for some reason. Majority of the ponds that I fish have this orange kind of hue, in a sense. I would say mud. It's, welcome to Georgia. They're, it's the maker of clay. So we have, a lot of waters that have this kind of orange hue to it. And I didn't think anything of it until I started throwing that Texas crawl color. and I saw how they responded. And then another thing that kind of confirmed it for me is I saw live crawfish in some of the waters that I was fishing, and I looked at the color, and sure enough, they were about the same color of that orangish, and then as they grow, as they get older, they do become a brighter red. And I would definitely think something you might want to look into, guys, when it comes to throwing a crawdad. This is just like a little bonus tip, ADD moment. Look into the spawn of crawfish and look into the colors that they become, because there is a time and a place for the different shades that the crawfish can become. And if you're on top of that spawning season and all of that change, you could probably slay during the spawn of crawfish. But moving on. So, best one I could find so far. This has become my favorite this season. I'm starting out strong with this one already. I like that one. But we can, let's keep going on as far as what. Think about the colors that you're going to be using. This is a beautiful June bug color by Weston. This is called the Cree Crawl. Now, think about the size that guy is. He's a little guy. He's not very big at all. So when it comes to the size hook that you're going to be using, think about that. When I try putting this on like a 3 or a 4/0, it doesn't work out very well. This thing's tiny compared to that. Just, you know what I mean? So think about that. All applies to what size hook you're going to be using. Not necessarily the weight. It doesn't really matter all the time, but think about the size hook that you're going to be using with the size bait that you have, because if you put on a too big of a hook, it just won't look right. The action is important, whether it's the lack thereof an action that you want, or if it's a lot of action that you're looking for. The hook makes that difference. So let's go over just a quick review of everything. I like to sum it up real quick at the end here, so just in case for some reason you zoned out at some point, because I do that a lot of the times and then I have to rewind. And I've gotten from some people that they like that I do my summaries at the end too, because we just kind of like to whoop it together, as the little lizard says. I'm sorry, he does something like that, doesn't he? Anyway, okay, so start with the basics. The rod to reel combo that you want to be using is, the most popular one that people talk about is a 7/6 rod, heavy action with a fast or extra fast tip. Okay? Now, me personally, like I said, I like to use somewhere between a 7 to a 7/3. That's what I do because I'm a pond hopper and I have a lot of tight spaces that I have to deal with. Keep in mind though, the longer the rod, the longer the cast, the better the backbone. So, if you can get away with the longer rod, get away with it. That fast tip is important. Like I said, guys, you want to have that sensitivity there. You want to feel everything down there at the bottom where that bait is sitting. And especially if you're weightless. You don't feel it right away if it's getting it on the drop. So that extra fast or fast tip that you have is going to be key when it comes to feeling the sensitivity of the fish biting. The reel that you're going to be using, start at a 7/1. That's where I would start. That's probably where I would probably stay too. 7-to-1, 7 gear ratio, 8 gear ratio, somewhere right in there. 7-to-1 is one of the most popular speeds out there right now. It's not hard to find an affordable 7-to-1 ratio that's good overall. So it's not hard. That's where I'd start. 7-to-1, that's the juicy spot. The weight that you use for your fishing line, most popular one that people use is a 15-pound to 17-pound fluorocarbon. The reason why they use fluorocarbon is because it sinks, and the whole idea behind the Texas rig is to make it sink, so you want it to get down. When it comes to how fast you want it to, that all depends on the weight that you're going to be using. I personally use 12-pound line a lot of the times. Again, because you're a pond hopper, body of water, whatever the situation is, just think about your situation and apply it. When it comes to the plastics that you want to use, the variety is pretty much endless. Okay, I think that's the most exciting part to me when it comes to a Texas rig, and it makes it so broad, is that you can Texas rig just about anything when it comes to plastics. Stick baits, ribbon tail baits, creature baits, crawl baits, beaver style baits. I don't even know what it's a creature bait, like the trench hogs and the brush hogs and it's endless. There's so many different kinds of baits that you can throw and plastics that you can throw on a Texas rig. Okay, take this into consideration when it comes to the weight that you're throwing with your plastics. Different plastics have a different floating rate. Okay, so if you want it to get down, for example, okay, this is what we're gonna, for example, if you want a plastic to get down a little bit further, quicker, but it's a super floating worm. Like, what's one that floats really well? So, the Slim Shake worm, in my opinion, it's not the slowest floating one that I know, but when I throw it weightless, to me it has a good rate all by itself. It's not too fast or anything like that. So if you throw like just like the Guggen Lunker log, right? If you threw it out there weightless, it falls rather quickly. You know, not the quickest, but it's heavier, so it falls really quick. And then you have the Slim Shake worm, and it kind of does. It's a less falling action. It falls at a slower rate. So take that into consideration. A lot of the times, you know, they have salt in the plastics themselves, so that's going to change the floating action on it. And if it's a plastic that you know floats, but you want it to get down quicker, maybe go up a size on your weights than you normally use, so that way it has a quicker rate on it. Just think about that. Now, I know I talked about the most popular sizes with the hooks. You got the 2 to 3 to 4, 5/0 hooks, all aughts, 1/0, 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, 5/0. Those are the most popular sizes. But what I wanted to re-mention again was the 3 most popular kinds of hooks that you have. You have the EWG hook, you have the offset hook, and you have the straight shank hook. I'm going to be using the straight shank more this next year, this season, next year, whatever you want to call it. I'm definitely going to start using them more because I am interested to see the hookup ratio and to see if that is true, that you're going to have, you know, there's a better hookup ratio with straight shank. Because if so, then I have been making a big mistake this whole time, and I will tell you personally if that happens. Alright guys, I'm going to leave it there for you. I am sitting here in my head trying to go over it, making sure that we covered not everything, because I'm not sure you really can cover everything when it comes to the Texas rig, because it is so broad and, you know, has such a lot. But I really hope that I got the basics out of the way for you at least. I really hope that you have a better understanding of the Texas rig now. It is the most versatile rig, in my opinion. It's one of the most versatile rigs. It is, in my opinion, again, the most popular rig out there. I think more anglers know about the Texas rig more than they know about any other rig. Maybe I'm wrong, but when it comes to the Texas rig, it is the first rig that I teach anybody that's learning how to fish. It was the first one that I was taught personally, and there's so much out there on it, and it's a great rig. So let me know what you liked about the video, guys. Drop a comment. Let me know if I missed something. You know, did I miss a huge thing that I'm just not thinking of? It's kind of like stressing me out a little bit. But I think I covered majority of it. I think I got a good... I hope I covered it enough and you have a good understanding of it. Anyway, guys, as my brain's just sitting here going, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, turn on all your notifications so you know when the next video drops. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You guys know how it goes, right? We're out there fishing. We're out there catching. And we're over here trying to make sure we really did cover all this stuff with the Texas rig. I don't know. No complaints. But as far as punching and flipping goes, that is where you're going to want heavier weights. Oh, sorry guys. I gotta stretch my foot out here. I actually got... Ow. Oh, there's a hook in that bait. There's a snake in my boot. Alright, had to stretch my foot up here. It's just got a little bit of healing it's gonna do. Yeah. We're not going into that. That's not what this is about. My foot's hurt right now and we're gonna go through it and we're gonna heal. But anyway. Guys, what was I talking about? Darn it!